Thank you all so much for joining me. I can't wait to hear how you guys are feeling and moving into like our sequencing part of the clinic. So let's go around and let's share our names, where we live, how you feel, and your biggest challenge with sequencing. That was a lot of things. So name, where you live, how you feel after class, and your biggest challenge with sequencing a yoga class. And I'm going to start with you, Melanie.
There we go. Okay, so I'm Melanie Rivera. I'm from Fort Lauderdale area, Florida. And I'm new at being a yoga teacher. So sequencing has definitely where I've been a little stuck at, and making sure that I have a good flow. So I guess maybe picking that right peak pose and then just building everything around it. So that's my challenge.
Yeah, well, you're in the right place because we're definitely going to work on that today.
Awesome.
And how do you feel after class?
I feel awesome. I feel nice and stretched.
Yay. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Omar, if you'll go next.
Hello, I'm Omar Surita, and I'm from New York City, New York. And I just flew in from Phoenix 5 hours this morning to JFK. So I was tired, but after this yoga session, I'm feeling more energetic and much needed.
Woo!
Yeah, so thank you for that. And similarly to Melanie, I too just graduated from my 200 hour YTT. And so definitely a different perspective being a student and being a teacher. And you just go with the flow. And I never, even if the instructor made a oops, I was like, okay. But as a teacher, it was like, oh, wow, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to look, I have to breathe, So sequencing has definitely been a challenge. Looking at your videos, I saw the papers and the books everywhere. That was me during YTT. I was like, oh my God, where, how?
Yeah, I totally get it. It's like when you make that shift from student to teacher, there's so many things to focus on. Like, how do you breathe while you're speaking? And how do you look at people and remember your cueing and remember your sequence? Like, it's so many things to learn to do at once. Yeah. Well, I'm so happy that you're here and thank you for being here even after your 5-hour flight. I'm sure you were tired, but now you're energized.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Hannah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm Hannah. I'm from Michigan. I've lived in a few different places in Michigan. Right now, I'm settled in the southwest side, so nice area. I've been teaching for a few years now. After your class, I feel really good. I was kind of sleepy. My lower back's been a little bit tight, so that was all really good stuff with the hips today. And I really loved your intention setting at the beginning too. It was very like powerful and meaningful. So definitely resonated with me. My biggest areas that I feel like I need to work on for sequencing is maybe more of like the confidence. I feel like I over explain a lot. Like I have to justify why I'm having them do certain poses or like the transitions to get there. So I feel like I really need to work on the transitions between poses and then not over explaining, like just know that I'm doing the right thing and I don't need to tell them every little teeny tiny detail of why we're doing it. So
yeah. Yay. Well, I'm so happy that the Dharma talk resonated with you. And I totally get that. It's like I love how you want to tell them why. Cause I think like sometimes when teachers don't tell their students why, they're like, it doesn't click for them. So it's like finding that balance of like, what I want to like inform them and educate them, but I don't want to like overdump information that they don't need to know.
yeah.
So I totally get that. And I love all things transitions, like totally, totally love them. So you are totally in the right place. And Kelly, I know you're driving. I don't know if you can unmute and you want to introduce yourself or you can't. There she is.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Kelly and Dog.
Hi, I'm not going to look at the camera. I'm just going to drive. So
Perfect.
I'm Kelly. I live in New Jersey. I graduated YTT a year ago. and I just started teaching this summer. And I started a stand-up paddleboard yoga business. And I haven't put paddle boards in the water yet, because in New Jersey, where I live, finding water is not easy because I'm in the central part. And anyway, so I wanted to take this class, this workshop, because I have exactly what you talked about, that teach because I have no experience, and everybody, all the other teachers know more than me, and the students all feel like, why did I come to this class? And because every person that wants to teach has their specific voice and their specific experience that is needed and will resonate with who it should resonate with. And I just want to learn how to feel, not so much learn, but I want to feel prepared so that I do feel confident. And I think the sequencing will help me with that.
Yes. Well, congratulations, Kelly, on starting your stand-up paddleboard business. That is amazing. Have you guys ever done stand-up paddleboard yoga on the Zoom? Yeah, Hannah has. Omar's like, no. Melanie's like, yeah, it's like challenging. It adds a whole nother element. It's really, really cool. So I love that you're bringing that to New Jersey. We totally need that. And you're totally in the right place. Having having confidence in your sequence will bring you confidence on the mat. Less of that like doubting and imposter syndrome will totally be there. So thank you all for being here. I'm so excited. So I'm just going to dive right in. I think you guys all have copies of the ebook, right? Because I'm going to be using that as kind of our structure and template. So I'll go through very briefly the 5 easy steps for sequencing, and then we're going to sequence a class together. We'll pick a peak pose. I'm going to have you guys go into breakout rooms and work together, and we'll all create parts of the sequence, and then we'll put it together. So it's going to be a sequence we create. So the first step is making this sequencing BFF list. So this is super important to categorize your poses by body parts, because when you're going to sequence off a peak pose, one of the steps later on is to list out the key muscles. And it makes it so much easier if you already know, like, oh, here are all my hip poses, here are all my hamstring poses, here are all my heart openers. So then you could just go to your sequencing BFF list, and there are all of the poses for you to put in your class to prepare for your peak pose. Does that make sense? So that has been like my secret weapon for sequencing. When everyone's like, well, what do I put in my class? What do I put in my class? You will literally give yourself a list of poses to include. Now, you don't have to include all of them because there might be a lot in that category. You'll kind of work to figure out that a little later on. Then the next step is to pick a class style. So I am such a believer. I know this is like very controversial in the yoga world. I don't believe in all levels yoga. So I know I've had this experience many times where I've gone to just say yoga on the beach. It's really popular here in South Florida. And it's an all levels yoga class. And I'm kind of observing the students. It's maybe a crowd of like 100 people. And the people who literally never done yoga before are so lost because they don't even know how to do downward facing dog, because it's actually a really hard pose if you're not flexible and you don't really stretch and you sit a lot. Like, it's actually a really hard pose. So I'm looking around, and new students who actually need to be taught how to do yoga poses are lost. And then when we're moving through lots of vinyasas, they're doing chaturanga totally wrong, where they actually could get injured. And then the more seasoned practitioner like myself, I'm just a little bored. And it's just because the class is for nobody. So the next step is to actually pick your audience. Who are you teaching to? Are you teaching to a beginner, where you're going to break down how to do poses? Are you teaching for somebody who has a little yoga knowledge, who maybe knows the basics and is ready to flow more? Are you teaching to a seasoned practitioner who knows the basics and wants to be challenged? Are you teaching power yoga, where they want to do crazy arm balances and sweat and hit all of those crazy poses? Like, who are you teaching to? And that will also input like what your peak pose is and the poses that you put into class. Does that make sense? Awesome. And to answer your question, Omar, sorry, BFF means best friend. So it's your yoga sequencing best friend list. It's your best friend list. I made that up maybe like 8 years ago. My boyfriend at the time was in yoga teacher training, and he was having this experience that we all have. We go through training and we're like, how do we sequence? And I was like, I will teach you how to sequence. Then I don't know, that was the first thing that I came up with, because that's what I had personally done, is like categorize all of my yoga poses. So now that you have your BFF list, you know who your class is for. And so sometimes like at a studio, it might say all levels yoga, right? And in your mind, I might still tell myself, okay, if I'm teaching at a studio and they're telling me it's all levels, I'm still going to be teaching maybe for someone who has some yoga knowledge, right? And if you're teaching your own classes and you can dictate it, I would just say it. You know, this class is for beginners. This class is for people who have some basic knowledge, like not being scared to really attract your ideal yoga students, because it will be a service for you and a service for them. After you know that, your next step is to pick your peak pose, list out the muscles in your peak pose, and then go to your sequencing BFF list and look at all of the poses that you could put in your class. And then the next step is the funnest. You actually get on your mat, you use the class template, and you fill it out. So any questions kind of about those 5 steps before we dive into doing it together? Okay, so let's sequence a class together. So let's start by picking our class style. What kind of class would you guys want to sequence? Do you want to sequence a beginner, a slow flow, a vinyasa flow? What kind of class?
Slow or vinyasa.
Okay, does anybody else have input, slow or vinyasa?
I say vinyasa. It's my favorite.
Vinyasa. Okay, so we're going to sequence a vinyasa flow class. Okay, so this is the class that's meant more for the seasoned practitioner, right? So they understand all of the yoga basics. They know how to do a vinyasa, warrior poses, and they want to be slowly taught more advanced poses, right? And actually taught how to do them. Okay, so now let's pick our peak pose as a group. What do we want our peak pose to be? What do you guys think some good peak poses would be?
Crow pose.
Sure, crow pose. What else do you guys think?
Or like half moon, standing half moon. I do that a lot.
Half moon's a great one for vinyasa. What else do you guys think could it be?
Dolphin.
Dolphin pose. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily pick dolphin as a peak.
Or headstand.
Headstand, yeah. And dolphin would be a good prep for headstand. Okay, so we've got crow, half moon, or headstand. Out of those 3 poses, which one would you guys like to pick for our peak pose? What do you guys think?
Half moon.
Half moon. Does everybody agree? Cool. So I'm just going to type this in the chat because I can't share my screen for some reason, so I apologize. So in half moon, what are the 3 key muscles that we use that we need to be stretched or strengthened?
Core.
Core.
The standing leg would need to be activated.
Okay, which muscles of the standing leg?
Like quad, and then hamstring needs to be open and stretched.
Yeah, definitely hamstring. And definitely like the quad. I would say quad is more like secondary, but definitely the quad as well. And then what else for half moon? What's the big one that half moon is?
Balance.
That it is definitely balance. I'll do it for you guys so you can see.
Hip.
Hamstring.
Hamstrings. Did somebody say hips?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I said hamstring. I didn't say hips.
Yeah. So definitely core, hips, hamstrings would be my top 3 for half moon. And when I think of half moon, I totally think of hip opener, right? Our hips are literally stacking on top of each other. Of course, we do need our core. Of course, we need that standing leg to be open. But the top key muscle I would think of would be hips, hamstring, and then core. But we have our 3 right here. So now let's brainstorm as a group some poses that work the core. Like what poses could we do that activate our core?
Plank, boat pose.
Yes. Plank, boat. I see you thinking, Omar. What else do you think for core poses?
Chaturanga.
I was thinking bicycles, but
Bicycles. Hey, that's like a really good variation of like a Lobo on your back. Yeah.
Like what kind of comes to mind is almost like a gate pose, like knee to elbow ish, because you're kind of in that shape.
Gate pose crunches. I love that. I got chaturanga, Melanie. What else do you think, Melanie?
Did you say plank already?
Yes, plank.
Oh, okay.
What do you think, Kelly? I know you're driving, so I don't want to. Oh, you're muted, I think, if you could say something.
For core, I was thinking boat pose.
Boat.
Or hollow body.
Yes.
Good one.
Hollow body Lobo. Cool. Some other super easy ones are just even something like either in tabletop, knee to elbow, or in down dog, same thing, knee to elbow, right? Knee to nose, knee across the body, or even this in plank, right? What other ones do I love for the core? The core is my least favorite thing, by the way. But there's so many different variations of core things. So you guys have a good list of some core poses that you could incorporate. Oops, I spelled gate wrong. Okay, let's think of hips. What are some poses that work the hips?
Lizard.
Lizard, yes. What else?
Pigeon, frogs.
Pigeon, frog.
Stacking the hips and downward dog.
Yes. I know what you're talking about. Down, dog, open hips.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Omar and Kelly? What are some poses that work the hips?
Hip circles.
Yep, hip circles for sure.
Alasana.
What'd you say, Omar?
Alasana.
Child's pose?
Oh wait, no, this one.
Yogi squat.
Yogi squat. Yes, that's one of my favorite. Yogi squat. Yeah, even low lunge.
How about
What'd you say, Kelly?
skandasana?
Skandasana. Yep.
Skandasana.
Half yogi squat.
Warrior 2 would get you in that shape that we need for the hips too.
Yep. Warrior 2. Look at you guys. You guys know I love this. We got lizard, frog, down dog, open hips, hip circles, yogi squat, low lunge, high lunge, half yogi squat.
Would humble warrior be one of them too?
Humble warrior, I think more is like when our hips are closed in warrior 1. And I also think of more core. So that would actually fit underneath our core category. Yeah, core heart opener. Any poses that are like in the warrior 2 legs, right? So like reverse warrior would work. I generally actually don't categorize the standing poses because I think that the standing poses literally work so many things, right? Even when you're doing warrior, you're working your core, you're working all of your leg muscles, you're working your arms. But it's still good, definitely good to put in because this will be like a list of poses for you guys to incorporate. We've got lizard, pigeon, frog, down dog, hip circles, yogi squat, low lunge, high lunge, half yogi squat, warrior 2, reverse warrior. So there is your hips list. And then hamstrings. What poses work the hamstrings?
Any forward folds.
Forward fold, yeah.
Yes. Forward fold. So that could be standing forward fold, right? That could be seated forward fold. What else?
Triangle.
Triangle.
Legs up the wall.
Legs up the wall.
Plow pose if you want to go for a reach.
Yeah, plow if you want to go for a reach for sure. Yeah. And then simply reclined hamstring stretch with a strap or even without a strap. Even something like standing split, pyramid, and half split pose, which we did today in class, which is this one. I know people call poses by so many different names. Like somebody I follow calls this runner stretch, but I call this runner stretch. So there's so many names, but this half split, we're really getting the whole back of the leg here. Pyramid pose. Cool. So you guys now have a solid list, right? So now knowing that our peak pose is half moon, we've got our 3 key muscles, core, hips, hamstrings, and now we have a list of potential poses that we could put into our class, right? So the first thing to sequence is the warm-up. So the goal of the warm-up is to move the spine in the 6 directions. Who knows the 6 directions of the spine?
So forward, back bend, side to side, and then twist side to side.
Yes. So forward flexion, extension, rotation, and then lateral side bending. Now, the thing is that when we're doing the warm-up, we need to find a warm-up pose that is also working the cores, the hips, the hamstrings, right? So I think one of the biggest mistakes new teachers make is that they'll just do that in a seated crisscross position. Now, unless your peak pose is full lotus pose, I don't recommend just doing it in crisscross yoga sauce, right? You're not really working your hips, your hamstrings, or your core when you're just seated in easy seat. So what other poses that work the core, the hamstrings, or the hips could we move the spine in the 6 directions in?
Table.
Definitely could do it in table, but in table, how would we be working the core, the hips, or the hamstrings? Tell me more.
Well, you would do the cat-cow, thread the needle, and then I don't know how you do the lateral.
Yeah.
So that's where I get stumped. Yeah.
I like your thinking. Definitely like your thinking. Like doing cat, cow, and tabletop would definitely stretch the core. But thread the needle is more of a arm opener than a
do a twist.
Yep. So I want you to look through our list here that we have. And is there any seated pose? That would be a good place to start. What would be a seated pose that works either the hips, the hamstrings, or the core?
Lizard, no?
No, because lizard is like this, right? Let's go through it. So lizard, not seated. Pigeon, not seated. Frog, not seated. Down dog, open hips, not seated. Hip circles, not seated. Yogi squat, not seated. Low lunge, not seated. High lunge, not seated. Half yogi squat, not seated. Warrior 2, reverse warrior, not seated. So nothing on that list, although there is one other pose I'm thinking of that we didn't put on that list, but we'll come back to it. That is seated. Hamstrings, forward folds. So we've got standing forward fold and seated forward fold. So how do you think in a seated forward fold, we could move the spine in the 6 directions? Let's all get into seated forward fold. That's the best way to do it.
Forward.
I mean, could you do like a Mary Chastina C, like throw that kind of in?
Absolutely. So we could be forward here. Yep. We could do half Lord of the Fishes. And then how could we side bend? Yeah, you got it, Melanie. You could literally just be right here and go side to side,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because this could be such a fun way to, in a different way, warm up the class, right? We could go forward, really stretching our hamstrings, preparing for where we're going. We could take the fingers behind us, kiss the shoulder blades, get that extension, right? So you could even almost do a seated cat and cow right here. You could do it with cactus arms, or you could literally fold forward and then take the arms back behind you, right? Then you could just bend side to side while you're in the pose. That was great. And then, like Hannah said, we could do half Lord of the Fishes for our twist. So now, so working with those 3 poses, whoever is going to be doing the warm-up section, because I'm going to break us out into breakup groups, your challenge is going to be how to make a mini flow, right? So now that we know we're going to start in a seated forward fold, we need to warm the spine in the 6 directions. How could we connect those poses together and maybe add in some other poses that also work the core, hips, and hamstrings? Does that make sense? So warm up is going to be seated, forward, fold, plus warming up the spine in the 6 directions. Okay. So that's the warm up section. And this is like literally a hack, right? So anytime you're like lost on, oh my God, what do I put in the warm up? If you go through your yoga sequencing BFF list, under the 3 muscles that you're using, look for any seated poses, because you could literally do this in any seated pose, right? The one that we didn't have on there for hips was butterfly. So in butterfly, you could literally do seated cat and cow, side bends, twists, right? And we're still opening the hips. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You could literally do the same thing in, I call this seated tree, but Janusirsasana, right? You could literally also fold, take the arm back behind you, twist, side bend, right? You could do it in straddle pose. You could do seated cat and cow. You can side bend. You can twist, right? So you could literally take any seated pose and move the spine in the 6 directions while also still working one of the muscles that you need to prepare for your peak pose. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then your warm-ups are going to be so fun because no one else does that, right? They're normally very, very basic. So this is like such a good way for you to mix up your warm-ups and have fun with it. So whoever is going to be sequencing the warm-up section, we've got you started just a little bit. So after the warm-up section, I wish I could share my screen. I'll have to get that fixed for next time. I'm sorry about that. So after we've sequenced the warm-up section of our vinyasa class, we normally then teach a modified vinyasa where you teach the vinyasa with the knees down. I always like to do this once, although I didn't do it today because I knew you were all yoga teachers because that's who my audience was. But maybe if I was in a regular teaching to people who weren't yoga teachers, I normally always teach one with the knees down so that they know that they can do that. That's me giving them permission. Hey, you can teach with you can take the vinyasa with your knees down. After that, we do sequence 1. So this is a sequence where we do either low lunge poses or standing poses, about 5 of them put together. So I'm going to break you guys out into groups, and 2 of you guys together are going to be responsible for coming up with sequence 1. Now, what I would do is I would go through that list that we created together and say, which poses are like a low lunge or standing pose that I could put into this first sequence, like lizard or low lunge or warrior 2, reverse warrior, half split, pyramid, right? All I'm doing now is like just going through my list of poses and seeing, oh, this fits in sequence 1. Does that make sense? It's literally kind of just my guide. Now, sequence 1 is supposed to be kind of like the preparatory sequence for what comes of sequence 2. So sequence 2 is the one that it is a little bit more advanced, right? So say in sequence 1, we do half split. In sequence 2, we might do pyramid pose, right? Because those are essentially building up, just getting more challenging. So you'll sequence like 5 to 7 poses together. And in between, so you'll do sequence 1, and then you'll do 3 vinyasas, right? You'll cue 3 sun salutation A's. And then the way that I love to do my sequence 2 is in sun salutation B, where you normally do warrior 1, I put my whole sequence. So I kind of use the structure of a sun salutation B, which is chair pose, forward fold, half lift, vinyasa, kick your leg through warrior 1, vinyasa, kick your leg through warrior 2, vinyasa, chair pose. Right? I use the structure of a sun salutation B, but in that structure, I put sequence 2. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then after that, we do our balancing pose. So our balancing pose here is half moon. So sometimes my balancing pose will be in sequence 2. Sometimes I'll just teach my balancing pose. Sometimes I'll make a mini balancing flow. So for the purposes of today's sequence that we're going to make together, whoever is doing sequence 2, I want you guys to put in half moon in your sequence 2. Does that make sense? So your balancing pose is going to be in your second sequence. And then we move into the cool down, which consists of forward folds and back bends. And so, like I said, we already have our list, right, of the poses to incorporate. So we know pigeon's a hip opener, pigeon's considered a forward fold, right? And so we literally have our list of poses to incorporate. The fun part with the cool down is just how are you going to connect them together to flow? So I'm going to put you guys into 2 groups of 2, and one group is going to sequence together a warm-up. Okay, and you guys already have the basic structure. We already decided we're going to do seated forward fold. I want you guys to think of how in that forward fold are you going to move the spine in the 6 directions. And then you also get to add on some tabletop poses that incorporate hamstrings, hips, and core. That same group, I also want you to create the cool down, right? What's going to be the cool down of this? The other group is going to create sequence 1 and sequence 2. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Any questions? Okay, so let me put you guys into breakout rooms. Let me see if I remember how to do this. Participants. Breakout rooms, okay. Okay, so Hannah and Kelly are going to be in room 1, and I want you guys to think of the sequence 1 and sequence 2. And then Melanie and Omar, you guys are going to be in room 2, and I want you guys to think of the warm up and the cool down. And I'll be coming in and out of the breakout room. So if you guys have questions or you get stuck, you can feel free to chat me, or if I'm in your room, ask me. Awesome. Welcome back, everybody. So I want to see what you guys came up with. So if our warm-up people will actually show us on their mat what you guys came up with for the warm-up.
Okay.
Melanie and Omar, what did you guys come up with?
So
okay, go ahead. You want to go, Omar?
No, go ahead.
So we actually changed it from the seated forward fold to butterfly. So everybody would start in the butterfly pose. And then for the flexion and extension for the 6th point of the spine, we would start with cat-cow for 5 breaths. And then we would go into a spinal twist and then the side bends.
Awesome. And Omar's demoing over there. I love it. You hit the 6 points of the 6 movements of the spine and you're opening the hips as well. So that works. Cool. Thank you, Omar and Melanie. And I'm typing this all down in a sheet that I'll send to you guys after so we all could
Awesome.
the class. Melanie, or not Melanie, Hannah and Kelly, what do you guys think of for sequence 1? If you guys will actually get on your mats and show us, that'd be awesome.
So we started it as if we were in seated forward fold. And we were going to, from there, come up the boat pose, cross the ankles, bring it to tabletop. From here, what was our next from our tabletop? What did we have after that? Was that we would extend the left leg for gate pose? Are you there? Hello?
Oh, Hannah, you're muted.
Oh.
You're muted, Hannah. I was typing, so I wasn't looking.
Oh, okay. We had gate pose and we would come up,
Yeah.
stretch to each side. And then we said we could like do some crunches with the our arms, our hands behind our head.
Ooh, I love that. I've never seen that before. I am learning from you guys.
And then, we're just gonna do like some hip rocks in that gate pose, like front to back to open up through the hips a little more.
Like leg extended hip rocks. I love that.
Yes, yeah.
And then
And
side.
Oh, I need to do that now with them.
Yeah.
it also said we could from here do a heart opener.
Yeah.
And that's also prep for like the half moon shape.
Yes.
And then release the hands back to tabletop and then extend the right leg out for the other side. And then repeat.
Love it. Okay, so you guys are coming from, let me just make sure I got it. So even if you guys had just done butterfly, you can lift the knees up, come to your boat. I love that. Working the core, cross at the ankles forward, and then one leg out, right to the side, rocking back and forth. I feel this in my like hamstring and my inner leg so much. So I like love this. Yeah. And then you'll come up to gate, right? And then you'll do this type of crunching.
Right.
And then what did you guys say from here? Then what was it?
From here, just drop to your, wait, did we say forearms? No. Right hand press down, swing the left leg back for a heart opener. Grab the foot.
Love it.
I'm not catching my balance. Grab the foot. If you can, release back to tabletop.
Perfect.
Or we could do like from the grit is to like actually float everything for a second and then come back down.
That's
I love that.
Yeah.
Because that's like a modified half moon.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So I got boat, cross ankles, tabletop, and then tabletop with leg extended, rock back and forth. Then your gate pose. Then gate pose with crunches with hands behind the head. And then heart opener, quad stretch. The hardest thing about typing out the sequences is that there's so many different names for the poses, and then some poses don't have official names. So I hope you guys will understand how I'm typing it out. Modified side plank. And then back to tabletop and then second side. That's awesome. You guys got so creative. Cool. Okay, what'd you guys come up with for sequence 2?
So from there, we're figuring we're coming back through from downward facing dog from the sun A's.
Yes.
So we were saying to just do a few like knee to nose crunches, and then do like one of the little downward dog hip openers. If you want to do like a wild thing or whatever, do it. And then we were going to step forward into warrior 2. Let me switch this way so that we're opening up this way. And Kelly actually brought this one up because she said that that's how she normally transitions into the half moon, is tipping over from your warrior into it. So we're getting right into it fast.
I love it. And then half moon.
And then
Perfect.
tipping back into warrior 2. We didn't add much more after that. I think we kind of ran out of time. So
Yeah.
Okay.
but like
So,
tip
yeah.
back into your warrior 2. And then I suppose we should add something into like counter, maybe like the half moon. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I love it so far. So you're doing knee to nose, maybe opening the hip, coming into warrior 2, getting into half moon,
Opposite
and then
first warrior.
yeah, then
Length-
just going in,
yeah.
going right into reverse warrior, which is actually such a fun way to land.
Yeah.
Perfect. I love that.
And then cartwheel the hands back and then extend back to down dog and then do the opposite side.
Yep. Love it. Second side. Great job. And Melanie and Omar, what'd you guys think of for the cool down?
So that's good if they're gonna cartwheel the hands down to and then go back up into plank, then to downward dog, because that's kind of where we started, was downward dog. And then we would lift the leg. So I'll do demonstration. So lift the right leg, stack the hips, open up, and then we are going to go into pigeon pose. And then basically we're actually going to do a full forward fold down and with our forehead onto the ground, onto the mat, for 5 breaths. And then we're going to come back up into plank, back to downward dog, and do the other side. Then we go back into plank, lower ourselves down, turn over onto our back. So we're going to roll over and we're going to get our block and do a supported bridge. And then raise the legs for like they're up the wall. And then we'll come down, windshield, and then hug it all in for Savasana.
Love it. You guys got it. So you see how in the class you tied the whole theme of hips, hamstrings, like every single pose you did actually had a purpose. You weren't just putting in a pose to put in a pose, right? And so this is actually the key to what's called intelligent sequencing. Like every single pose has a purpose. It's all leading us up to half moon. So we have a really great base of an outline that we created today for this half moon, and I will send it out to you guys after class. Next Monday, I'm going to hold another one of these sessions. And what we're going to do next Monday is we're going to think of how we can add in some creative transitions and some creative, I don't know what the right, like not just creative transitions, but also like adding in some fun within the poses, right? So like a lot of the time, sometimes people think like when they sequence, they now need to be teaching crazy arm balances and all these things, but you actually don't have to be. You can, if you like it, you can, if that's who you want to teach to, but you actually can teach a lot of the same poses, but make them different based on what you're doing in that pose, right? So like, how can we take something like pigeon and we might teach that in every class, but teach it different so that it's also related to our theme. Like today we did pigeon upright with our heart open, and we did rolling pigeon because our whole theme of our class was heart openers, right? And so we'll kind of add on to this sequence like those fun things that will make the class more exciting. Does that make sense? Cool. Any questions about sequencing or anything that we did today? Cool. Well, I want to say thank you guys so much for coming. This was like so much fun for me to lead and to connect with all of you guys. I think having community is so important. I've loved getting to know you guys more off of Instagram and more like on Zoom and be able to talk to you guys face to face. I'll be hosting, I think I have scheduled 4 more of these free yoga classes, followed by a sequencing clinic. And this is leading up into my yoga mentorship program that I'm going to be starting in March. It will be 3 months long. We're going to dive way deeper into sequencing. We have a whole module on creative sequencing, which is my jam, a whole module on incorporating Dharma talks into your yoga class, and then a whole module about getting out there and really creating your own yoga community. So if you're interested in that, that will definitely be coming in email soon, but that's going to start on September 17th. So how that will work, we'll meet together on Zoom like we're doing now. And then you guys will also be teaching yoga classes to each other, getting and receiving feedback. So it will be a lot of fun. I'm really excited for that to open up. So if you guys don't have any other questions, let's close out our circle by sharing something that you learned today. Something that you learned today. Let's start with Hannah. She's the first one on my screen.
I learned that I need to go forward with my dreams and know that there are people that need what I have to offer.
Yes! It's so true. I love that. Thank you, Hannah. Kelly.
I think the main thing I learned was that other new teachers feel the same way or very similarly to how I feel. And that I think one of the things I want to express when I'm teaching is for the students to let go of the need for perfection. And I need to let go of that for myself as a teacher. Like, if my teacher makes a little error, it doesn't mean anything to me. But I feel like as the teacher, I have to be perfect when I don't expect perfection from my teacher. So I shouldn't expect it from myself. So that's what I learned today.
I love that. Yeah, I made an error teaching today. I said right leg. I'm like, no, left leg, right? So totally happens. We're human. Thank you, Kelly. Omar.
I learned in a nutshell the warming up the spine in the 6 directions. I was telling Melanie, I don't know if they explained it to me that way, but today I was able to learn it this way. And I learned that sequencing doesn't have to be anxiety provoking. It actually was fun and creative, and especially when you're amongst a group of other individuals, like you were saying before, that hey, you're not the only one out there that might be struggling. So versus the other one where it was like papers all over the place. Now it's just like this, and make it fun. Oh, awesome. Okay. Whew.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, literally, you guys sequence the class in an hour, like in 1 hour. That was it, So cool. Thank you, Omar. Melanie.
I kind of agree with Hannah, just knowing that we need to move forward with what we have to offer, and then also, just not be intimidated by it, because we can do it.
Totally. You can totally do it, Melanie. Yeah. When I first started teaching, I literally didn't know how to sequence, and I taught the same class for 1 year every day, and I didn't look at my students. I was teaching like at a club I went to Rutgers. I started the Rutgers Yoga and Reiki Club, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so bad. And people just kept coming because they wanted to move their bodies. And so it's like just letting ourselves, like Kelly was saying, be imperfect. They didn't know. Only I knew that I was teaching the same class. They forgot every week. So getting ourselves out there. Well, I learned that this was so much fun, and that definitely I already kind of knew this, but just reaffirming for me that I love teaching yoga teachers and being with you guys and being in community. So thank you guys. And I would love if we could take a photo. I'll tag you guys all on Instagram. So if everybody can smile. Beautiful. And I will send out the recording of our session and also the typed up sequence. You guys can feel free to use it. And like I said, next time we'll add in some creative sequencings and some more juice to the poses. So I hope you guys will be able to attend that. Yeah.
Juliana, maybe you can create a video with the sequence that we created.
Yeah, I love that. That is a great
Great
idea.
idea.
Yes. I like how you're thinking, Omar. Cool. Well, everyone have a wonderful rest of your Saturday, and hopefully I'll see you guys next. Oh, it will be next Monday. I guess I should tell you the date so you can put it on your calendar. August 22nd at 6:30 p.m. will be my next session. So from 6:30 Eastern time to 8:30 p.m. if you're available. So, yeah. With that, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Cool.
Thank
Hey,
you.
thank you.
You're
Have a great day.
welcome. Bye.